Hey everybody, this is Matt with the Sword and Soul podcast. Today we will be diving into the purpose and within the family. A study in 2018 published in the Developmental Psychology found that the purpose-driven family involvement isn't just about responsibility. It actually shapes how we see ourselves and gives us a clearer sense of who we are. When our daily actions in the family feel meaningful, our identity becomes more grounded and resilient.
Today we're talking about purpose within the family, how the roles we play and the love we give shape not just our families, but also our identity, our mental health, and our walk with God. Have you ever wondered how the seemingly small things that you do at home might actually be tied to a bigger purpose?
So when you asked me that question, I thought back to my childhood and my upbringing, and I wanted to share some personal real life experience with you. From middle school all the way through high school, it was up to me to get myself through life. My parents got divorced when I was 10. My brother was 19 at the time, moved away to college, so it was just me. And I had to get myself to school. I had to feed myself, had to get myself home, get myself to bed, get myself woke up every single day. And that was strictly because my dad was an alcoholic. He was a full-blown addict, pills, marijuana, alcohol, just the whole shebang. So every day it was up to me to get myself to school, get an education, actually do my homework, get myself home, and on top of that, I did sports. So when I was 24 years old, I lost my father. Like I said, my parents were divorced, so it was up to me to bury him with the help of my brother. So I did what a lot of people do when they grieve. I turned to alcohol. Roughly about 6 months after my dad passed away, I was slightly drunk, and I had the realization that I am putting myself through the same situation that took my dad. So it took a harsh realization for me to realize that if I continue this path, I'm not going to be able to be who I need to be when I grow up. One thing with that, too, is at this time of my dad's death, I just had a 3-year-old. My daughter was young. She was needing a father, and that's who I needed to become. And for somebody that didn't really have a father growing up, it was a harsh check. I needed to realize that this life, this little infant, this child needed somebody there, whether it be for protection, guidance, or just a presence. So really what happened was, looking back at my life, I tried to become the parent that I never had. My dad was an alcoholic. He would come to my football games but not even leave the parking lot. He would sit in the parking lot and drink the whole entire time during my football game. And to me, it's like, you showed up, but you didn't. You were there, but you couldn't take an hour break from the alcohol to be present.
You talked a lot about your father being in your life and a part of your life, there for your day to day, but at the same time, there was no true presence emotionally, spiritually. Yeah, he was there physically, and that he had that physical presence, but it was that emotional presence that you lacked.
Yeah, I mean, as a child growing up, my dad got custody somehow, with, especially in the state of Indiana, that the father got primary custody through divorce. There was no teaching. I always look back at it as I had a shadow there. There was a person, but the person brought no value. He didn't feed me. He didn't educate me. He barely spoke to me. And when you're growing up, especially through teenage years, you put yourself in a lot of situations where a man's supposed to step up and say, hey, knock it off. You do that again, you're going to get yourself killed. You're going to get yourself hurt. Shut it down. And this is how a man is supposed to handle it.
Yeah, a lot of individuals who come from families that struggle with addiction, abuse, emotional neglect, it puts all the pressure on the child to parent themselves. And that should never be the case, but often it is. And, as a child, you can do only so much with the information that you have. If you have other positive role models in your life, you can often get some of that modeling from them. But if you don't even have that, it's a guessing game without to raise yourself.
Yeah. And in all reality, I look back at my upbringing, as I would call that loose term in my case. It was just trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
The bus is going to be at the bus stop at this time if you make it. If not, you got a bicycle, get yourself to school. School gets out at 3 o'clock. Get on the bike, get on the bus, get yourself home. Do what you're going to do. Get yourself back home again and get yourself in bed and do it again.
To me, the fact that you actually had that initiative and that drive to do those things on your own says a lot about who you were and who you were wanting to be.
Yeah, I always say men, or in my case, a young man, knows what's expected of them because of society telling them what's expected of them. But when you don't have a disciplinary figure to remind you or put you in check when you're starting to step out of line, I lacked that.
Mm-hmm.
And having a 3-year-old kid at that time, I took a step back and said, I'm going to be the father to this child that I wish I had growing up.
See,
Whether
and
it's a
that's,
presence, the
yeah.
discipline, or just somebody to talk to.
Yeah. And those right there, I see a lot of your values coming in and kind of guiding your purpose in that aspect. And without those things, I mean, where do you think you would be today?
Well, if you look at my family dynamic growing up, I come from a whole entire family on my dad's side of alcoholics, drug abusers, and I would even say narcissists. My mom's side, I didn't really know anybody other than my mom. Her father committed suicide. My grandma passed away at a very young age in my life, so I wasn't around her side much. But my mom was very shut off as it was. She came from a messy situation. She watched her dad commit suicide right in front of her on her 16th birthday. So she was very shut down with emotion. And when her and my dad got divorced, she was hopping from relationship to relationship, I'm sure searching for happiness. And with that, I didn't have a mom to check me as well. Her and I got real close once my dad passed away. She became my rock, and she was my family. I have a brother, and then I had her. And with her passing away this last year, you really have to figure out how to become the matriarch of your family real quick.
It sounds like a lot of genetic loading issues between substance abuse, uh, suicide, narcissism, probably a sprinkling of depression and anxiety, and who knows what other psychiatric issues that are just passed from generation to generation. And now here you are, kind of at a crossroads at a very young age with no guidance, with no real roadmap on how to get where you want to be. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, like when I met my wife when I was 28 years old, I told her my life story, and she took a step back and she goes, "You really shouldn't have turned out the way you did."
Yep, she's
And
right.
I use that as a constant reminder. I showed up to a family reunion just to show my family that, hey, I beat the Barnes curse.
Yeah.
I don't have an alcohol issue. I don't have a substance abuse issue. I graduated high school. I'm pretty sure the third person in my whole entire family to own their own home.
Wow.
And that's such a small feat for many people, but when you lack that guidance growing up, it pushes you.
Yeah, and that touches on a point where a lot of people take for granted the things that they accomplish because society tells us that we should do these things. We should go to college. We should get a job. We should own a home. We should have 2.3 kids. We should have a dog. But really, when you look at the baseline, that those a lot of those things people can't even achieve, and they have difficulty achieving those things. So I see a lot of people who discount stuff like that are actually hard to do. There's a lot of things that can go wrong and that can hinder you from even meeting what, society considers, must-haves in life. And it's important to step back and look at what you've actually accomplished and what you've gotten and where you're at in your life, because a lot of people don't have that.
Yeah. And now that I'm a man of faith, it's constantly brought up that it's easier to get a camel through the hole of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. And looking at that statement nowadays, I would say a good 90+% of Western civilization is rich, especially compared to biblical times. Like, I have a house. My wife and I both have our own car. I've got a computer. I've got a podcast. Like, I have a lot going for me, and a lot of people continue to try to keep up with the Joneses. My neighbor built a brand new house across the street from me last year. It didn't make me say, "Oh, I need this." I'm very happy. I'm very comfortable with what I have in my life because I came from nothing.
Yeah.
There's a joke with my wife there. I grew up eating hamburger, macaroni and cheese, and peas, and my dad tried to church it up calling it Mac Delight. No, we were poor, and that's what you could afford to make for dinner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and as Americans specifically, we should really count our blessings with how much we've came through, where we're going, and what we currently have.
Yeah. And there's just this epidemic of comparison, especially with the just how much everybody's tied to social media. And I mean, I think I mentioned it in the first podcast, and I'll probably mention it in the future, but we're constantly shown these idealistic scenarios, and we only see the positive things that people are going through, when that's just a short flicker in their life, and it's
Yeah.
not representative of real life.
Yeah, I brought up this past Monday in our young adults ministry that Karen and I are leading that people don't post their lowlights on social media. They don't post what their debt ratio is. They don't post how many phone calls they're getting a day from debt collectors, or the fact that they do have bipolar disorder
Mm-hmm.
or anxiety because they are trying to chase something instead of being grateful for what they do have.
Yeah, and that's something, even I mean, I struggle with that all the time, is always wanting to be better, do more, goal chasing. And then when you do that, you put these blinders on, and that happens a lot. And I see it in myself. You put these blinders on, and then now all of a sudden you're not seeing what you have.
Yeah.
You don't live in the moment. And I see that in almost everybody, is that you take for granted what you have, and then 10 years go by and you're looking back, you're like, wow, those were the good times.
Yeah.
They were, and you're in good times. So take a step back and just slow down.
Yeah, one thing that I always look at with a double-edged sword is when Kara and I go on vacation, we don't post pictures of our vacation because that's for us.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to share that with everybody. But then when I went to bury my mother, it's like there's no pictures of her because she was the same way. And once you're gone, your family's going to want those pictures to look back at, to trigger that thought of even in the worst moment, there was a highlight to it.
Yeah. And I think it's important to roll back the technology a little bit. And I always suggest to people to, those pictures you take on vacation, how often did you go back in your phone and really look at them again, other than reposting them? Or,
Yeah.
oh, I went on that trip here, and you show somebody a slideshow real quick.
Yeah.
Instead, upload those to like Walmart, their photo app, and just print them off and make a photo book like we used to.
Yeah.
And then you've got it. And yeah, you're not going to look at it all the time, but it's there for you to grab when you need to, or you can lay it open on your coffee table as a reminder.
Yeah, when my mom passed away, I got all her photo albums from my childhood, and I looked through them. I was like, I forgot 99% of these photos even existed.
Yeah.
And knowing how the older generation was, she probably looked through those pictures once a year to remember their simpler times when I was a young kid and I was doing great things and I was in a relationship still with her.
Yeah.
So to reel it back in on purpose, as I grew through my faith and my realization that I had to be there for my daughter, it was really just about intent, being
Hmm.
intentional with the things with her, being present, giving her a shoulder to cry on, an ear to talk to, because I didn't have that. So I was looking through Bible verses for this specifically, and Ephesians 6:4 came up. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in training and instruction of the Lord. And looking at that, it's just specifically just straight up telling you have patience with your family, show them kindness, and give them the direction they need.
And that that verse kind of made some a little flashback for me, and it was when I was doing baseball, and you have a bad game, and I mean, there's no one harder on myself when it comes to competition than myself. And then you've got your coach, and then you've got your teammates, and you spend that time, you know, talking about how you screwed up, what you could fix, how you can do it better. And then when you get in, in the car to go home with your family, you don't need to hear it again from your
Yeah.
family about all the things you screwed up. And luckily, I didn't have to deal with that. But I know there's people who do. They get it from their coach, they get it from their teammates. They're hard on themselves, and then they get in their car and they've got a parent who just berates them and runs them down and talks about their mistakes for the whole game. And it's like that's the don't exasperate them. That should be
Yeah.
their solitude after just going through it with their coach and teammates.
Yeah. My daughter and I, we have a rule that once we leave the tournament, we don't talk about what mistakes you made. You're already beating yourself up over it. Like you said, your teammates already told you where you messed up. Your coach has already talked to you about it twice. It's
Yeah,
it's in your head.
yeah,
Let's talk about what you did good. The
yeah,
game's over. We're moving past that moment. It's on to the next. You showed up, which coaches don't even celebrate anymore that your kids are showing up to games. My years of coaching junior high football, it would be nothing for half the team not to show up for a game because their parents couldn't get them there.
yeah.
So yeah, they might have cost you a game, a point. They showed up. And with the way children are nowadays, social media and video games are such a contender for their attention. Just be happy that they're there and giving an effort.
Yeah.
The next verse that popped up in my mind was 1 Timothy 5:8. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially their own household, has denied the Lord. And as parents or guardians, if that's what situation that the Lord has blessed you with, the people that rely on us, we are responsible for. Looking at my childhood, I shouldn't have had to set that example for myself of what was expected. It's not that difficult to be a parent to tell your kid, this is what you need to do, this is what I expect from you. If you don't do that, there's going to be consequences.
Yeah, a lot of people just want to be friends with their kids, and that does not work.
Yeah, and that's 100% what my father was he was a friend. He wanted to have fun with you, he wanted to joke around, but there was zero parenting. So there was times where I'm sure in my adolescence that it really worked in my favor that he wasn't a disciplinary figure. But kids do yearn for somebody to correct them and sculpt them.
Yeah, when I look at that passage, I focus on that provide for their relatives, and it's easy for me to think, as a man, financially providing for them, but there's a handful of ways that you need to provide for your family. It's not just money. It's like we've been talking about presence,
Yeah.
being there, being engaged, helping with tasks that may not be what you normally do around the house. It's just important to step back and think, what other ways can I provide for my family other than what I'm actually doing? Am I neglecting certain things that they might need?
Yeah, it's money is the root of all evil. It does provide because you do have bills, you do need to eat, you do need shelter. But without your presence, your family's going to struggle. They desperately need, especially a father in the house. You look at society nowadays, a lot of the issues we're facing is because there's a lack of a father in the house.
Yeah. And it's this idea that you have to be perfect and be the best father or the best mother. The human body and mind is resilient,
Yes.
and it can take mistakes, it can take imperfection. All you need to do is be present and try.
Yeah, kids and probably spouses, when they get later in life, they're not going to say, man, my husband made so much money for us. They're going to think about the time that you spent with them, the effort you put into letting your loved ones know how much you care and how much you really just yearn to be around them. A lot of people give me a lot of grief because my wife is my best friend. I want to spend time with her. I want to be around her. If I didn't, why did I marry her?
Right.
And part of that is growing up, or was growing up with a very unhealthy household where my parents didn't even speak. When they did, it was a full flown argument. Things were getting thrown, and that was the only time they talked. And to this day, I refuse to raise my voice to my wife because it's just unnecessary. You can't take that back.
Yeah, I had a similar situation. It's what I remember, and it might be inaccurate, but from what I remember of my parents' interactions, it was fighting and it was arguing, and it was usually over money. And just like you, like, I don't raise my voice to my wife. I don't argue with her. I mean, there's if we have an issue, we talk about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can, for myself, I don't like conflict, so I also don't like to talk about a lot of things. But yelling and all that nonsense, like, it's just not worth. It's There's no need for it. And if that's where you go to in your relationship, then something needs to be reevaluated.
Yeah. And we talk about in our men's group at church all the time that it's not biblical to keep score.
Yeah.
So when it comes to an argument or even household duties, don't throw it in your wife's face or your husband's face that you do more. You guys are a partnership. You're doing everything for the benefit of each other.
Yeah, and it's easier to ask them to do something than to expect them to do it and not tell them. It's how are they supposed to know what your expectations are?
Yeah.
It Just ask them, hey, do you have time to do this for me?
The worst they can say is no, and then take it for what it is because I guarantee that it's not worth the argument.
Yeah.
If you truly love your spouse, that one thing you ask them to do isn't worth costing your marriage.
Yeah, like for me, I mean, I was a bachelor for a long time, and my wife is a neat freak and I'm not. So it's like, when it comes to vacuuming or dishes or laundry, it's like I'd let laundry go to the bottom of the dresser drawer before before I did a load, and then I'd forget about it. And over the years, like, I try to remember to go check the laundry or to do it for her. And I absolutely hate laundry. I've come around on dishes a little bit. Like, I don't mind doing the dishes, but it's just like I'm constantly fighting bachelor me and all of those behaviors that I did, because those are what come natural to me. And this, domestication for me is hard, but
Yeah,
I do what I can.
yeah, because you both of us got married in our 30s, a lot later in life, and you're a lot like me. We knew the things that we were looking for in the person that we were going to make our spouse, But getting married in your 30s, you're very set in your ways.
Yeah.
And then now you're taking on somebody else's little quirks and the things that are non-negotiables for them, and you still have to meet in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's part of the purpose of being in a family, is being there for them more than you're there for yourself.
Yeah. And I'm fully aware that she's done a lot more bending for me than I than I have for her.
And that's true love, that
Yeah.
she probably doesn't even tell you that.
Yeah.
You just look back and say, you know what, she's putting a lot of effort into this.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know why you haven't smothered me in my sleep yet.
Yeah, like Kara and I, we got married, and my mom moved in with us for 2 weeks shortly before her accident. And every day I'd go to work like, man, this is going to cause so many issues in our marriage. You hear all the time about how an in-law moves in
Yeah.
and everything just falls apart. And my wife was like, I love your mom being here. And I'm like, don't lie to me. It's a problem. She needs to get out. And she's like, no, I truly love your mom being here. And the last thing my mom said to me before she moved out, when she got her own place, was, it has been interesting being here. I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, you and Kara genuinely speak to each other. And I was like, yeah. And looking back at it, my mom was never in a relationship where they sat down as a couple, talked about their day, and just truly just spoke to each other. And it's something so simple for me, because it's one of my values, is my communication with my wife. If I can't talk to her, who can I talk to? I've got you. That's one of my top 3 friends that I speak to, and you and I speak almost every day for the last 11 years.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, I'm surprised you haven't looked at me and said, you're a nut job. Go find somebody else to be your friend.
I've got a pretty high bar for that.
But it's just, as you get older, you really do have to do a lot of bending for the people that you care about.
Yeah. And personally for me, it's I I'm like steel. Bending me is a process.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, like looking at my relationship with my wife, she's been a lot for me in ways that I really don't think about. Like, she took on a stepdaughter, and that was a 7-year-old time. It wasn't even a young infant, it was a 7-year-old. And she's been there for 9 years, and that's a lot for somebody to bend and just say, okay, I'm signing up for this.
Yeah. It's a big
And I
deal.
know what it's like to be a parent, but I don't know what it's like to be a step parent. I'm sure there's days where she looks at me and she's like, you need to do this with your daughter. You need to tell her this. But she doesn't.
Hmm.
There's times where she kind of tells me what I need to do, because it is a female to female dynamic. Because I look at things from a male perspective. I don't know how
Right.
my daughter sees things as a 16-year-old. I know how her boyfriend sees things, and it makes me want to slap him around a little bit. But
Yep.
that's just the adaptation of life.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about growing up in less than ideal conditions and basically having to raise ourselves into the adults that we are. And in clinical work, as an adult, we talk about reparenting the self. And often when we grow up without guidance, stability, emotional presence, all the things that we've been talking about today, those unmet needs carry into adulthood, and sometimes unconsciously. Like, you might not even know that you bring that baggage with you. But there is a hopeful part to it. When you become aware of the gap that you have between your childhood, adulthood, and all those gaps you might have in your family, friends, life, you can then begin to work on them. Like I said, we are resilient, and we can make the changes if we want to. And it's not just about highlighting that pain that we went through in childhood, but it's about like opening that door to allowing ourselves to heal and to grow up and transition from, yeah, we might be grown men, but there's parts of us that are still childlike because we didn't have those needs met. when we were that age. And it's the strength to turn around and look at that and to say, I need to work on that. I need to be better. And it's not about 100% flip, complete 180, just small progress, just highlighting it, being aware of it. And when you notice it, try to combat it.
Yeah, I think too. Talking about that, we do need to celebrate how far we come as people from our childhood, and you need to give yourself some grace. Life is not easy. You're going to be knocked down a lot. You're going to be picked up. You're going to be knocked down again. Continue to celebrate how far you've made it.
And you talked a lot about having to become someone else for your daughter. And you had a few rough years where you were finding yourself growing up, you know, trying to figure out who and what you wanted to be. And it's this process of becoming someone else because they needed it. I mean, your daughter needed a father.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't often, I mean, you didn't have to be a dad. I mean, you could have just dipped. I mean, that happens all the time. But you decided and chose to be what she needed. And while doing that, you're healing yourself too.
Yeah, I refused to become a statistic. And I really, even to this day, with her being 16, I try to be the father and the parent that I wish I had. She has a mother, she has a stepdad, she has my wife, and she has me. But I'm still trying to become the parent that I wish I had on both aspects.
Yeah, and you'll hear me say this all the time, probably every podcast, and I'll be a broken record with it, but I'm not going to apologize for it. It's not about being perfect.
No.
It's never about being perfect. It's about being present and being just a little bit better than you were.
Yeah. I call my daughter every single morning. I call her every evening. And that might sound like I am a helicopter parent. It's not, because every day is not guaranteed.
Yeah.
I call her to let her know I love her, and I hope she has a good day at school. And I call her in the evening to see how her day went. And it's just the intentionality of it behind her.
Yeah, for me, I'll be sitting or doing something, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's God, it's life. I need to text my wife. I just need to text her, I love her, or send a heart emoji. And I just do it. And there was one time, was it last week? I was out doing yard work and I was weed eating. And normally I'm on my phone all the time. Texts don't go more than 30 seconds without being without being read or responded to. But which God, that could be an episode or a whole series. But I had my phone in my pocket and I was like, I haven't looked at my phone in a while. And I was just like, I wasn't like down on myself, but I was like, I would love to open my phone and have one of those I love you texts from my wife.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then I just put it out of my mind. I finished my yard work. I put the weed down, put the battery back in the charger, pulled on my phone. And guess what was there? Exactly what I needed.
Yep. And it really ignites your heart to know that it's reciprocated.
Yep.
And I was the same way with my mom. I text my mom every single day, tell her I love her, just because I knew life's not guaranteed. There's a one day, it's all it takes, and everything falls apart. And the morning of my mom's stroke, I called her, and she didn't answer. And she called me 2 hours later, and she's usually up every day at 5 o'clock. She called me about 7:30, and I was on her pretty bad. Like, what are you doing? Why are you acting the way you're acting? She had a stroke in the middle of the night, and I did not know it. She didn't even know it. So I go about my business that day, and my daughter's waiting on her to pick her up for basketball. And she's like, Grandma's not texting me. Mama's not texting me. And it just wasn't right. And I made some phone calls, looked around, couldn't find anything. Come to find out, she had her stroke, and she was being lifelined to a hospital. And still to this day, it's like, I told her I love her, but I was hard on her. And that's where I continue to say, have grace. Mm-hmm. You don't know what somebody's going through. You don't know where they're at medically. Like, my mom just acted like she was groggy that morning. And that was the last conversation that was reciprocated, because after that she was nonverbal for 17 months before she finally passed.
Mm-hmm.
And I could let that bottle up and eat away at me, or I can say, I made a mistake. We moved from this, and I don't make that mistake again.
And also, when I hear it, I don't see it as necessarily negative. You're doing it from a place of love and concern.
Yep.
Maybe your approach or how intensely you harped on her for it maybe that is what gives you a little bit of pause. But overall, it sounds like the gesture itself was coming from a good place.
Yeah, and I tell my daughter to this day that I don't care where you and your mom are at right now, if you're arguing or if there's a scuffle, tell her you love her. Because it takes 1 second, it's all gone.
Yep.
So I do ask that everybody takes a second to think about, where do you feel the most needed in your family right now? What is your spouse needing from you, and what are you needing from your spouse? And how can you use your purpose in your family to alleviate that from them? I invite you to journal and pray about your role in the family, and just ask for God to give you more. As a man, we are supposed to lead our family, and we're supposed to give them direction. So ask God, if you are a man, where should I be leading my family right now?
As you're journaling, just make a list of the values, of your values that you have for yourself in your family, and then spend some time with them. Mull them over. Am I meeting that value? And if I'm not, how can I? And if I'm not meeting it to my expectations, what do I need to do to bump that up a little bit?
And as we discussed earlier, communicate your expectations to your family members, whether it be your spouse, your children, your parents. Communicate with them what you expect from them, and that will alleviate a lot of issues within the home. And you guys can work on moving your family forward in the right direction.
Absolutely.
So you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or Spotify at the Sword and Soul Podcast. We ask that you leave us a review, a thumbs up, a subscribe, or whatever you can on that platform. Also, I just want to touch on the base that the support that we got on our first episode was absolutely mind-blowing, and Jacob and I genuinely thank you for that.
Yes.
So once again, thank you so much. Next episode, we're going to be talking about the purpose within the church and the community. So be excited for that episode.
All right. See you guys later.
Have a good one.